This thought-provoking story is titled Sins of Nollywood. When a fortune teller once said that a man called Nollywood had forcefully impregnated Igbo land, but no one understood what he meant. And it came to pass, Igbo land gave birth to a generation that enjoys drinking the blood of their fellow human being or blood of holy spirits. According to the old seer, the motherland delivered multiple twins that resembled their father, children who engages in disquieting acts of cultism, teenagers who have no qualms using their parents for money rituals. The land has risen against those who dishonored the land. The movie industry was rattled. It began on a cold, rainy night in Lagos. The noisy atmosphere gave evidence to a chaotic civilization. Madame Mary, one of biggest film stars, sat in her car outside her mansion, gripping the steering wheel with trembling hands. She had just wrapped up a late-night shooting for her latest movie, Dark Ancestry, where she played the role of an evil priestess who ate unborn babies in the womb of their mother. The film had been grueling, filled with scenes of dark rituals and unsettling chants. But tonight, Mary couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching her. As she stepped out of the car, a gust of wind slammed the door behind her. She jumped, clutching her chest, and glanced around. The street was empty, the only sound the distant hum of a generator. She hurried inside, locking the door behind her. Her phone rang immediately and she picked it up to see a text from an unknown number. "You think you can mock me and go unpunished?" Her heart skipped a beat. Her fingers shook as she typed a response. "Who is this?" There was no reply, but suddenly a loud bang echoed from upstairs. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice quivering. Mary grabbed a kitchen knife and tiptoed up the staircase. As she reached the landing, she saw it. A dark, shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway. Its eyes glowed red, and it whispered in a language she didn't understand. Paralyzed with fear, Mary could only watch as it slowly raised a hand and pointed at her. Then, with a blood-curdling scream, it vanished. The next morning, the news broke. Madame Mary had been found unconscious in her home, mumbling incoherently about spirits and curses. Days later, she was pronounced dead at the hospital, with no clear cause of death. The industry was shaken, but it was only the beginning. By the end of the month, 3 more known actors had fallen victim to mysterious deaths. One of them drove up to the middle of 3rd Main Land Bridge, got off from his car and jumped to his death. A note found inside his car was scary. "They're angry. We have offended them." Rumors began to swirl. Some claimed it was the work of jealous rivals, while others whispered of angry ancestral spirits seeking revenge for Nollywood's disrespect for Igbo traditions. The industry was in chaos. Producers canceled shoots. Actors refused to take on roles involving traditional spirituality. Fear gripped everyone. In the midst of this turmoil, a young journalist named Lisa Johnson decided to investigate. Lisa was known for her bold reporting and had no patience for superstitions. What is happening in American Hollywood industry may have found its way in Nigeria film industry, she told herself as she prepared for her first interview with one of the affected families. But as she delved deeper, Lisa began to uncover unsettling patterns with all the victims, puzzling messages and strange connection to the roles they had played on screen. Lisa's investigation took her to an old actor who suddenly retired from acting without a reason. His name is Nduka Ojello. Nduka lived in a small, rundown house on the outskirts of Asaba. His eyes were weary, his voice trembling as he spoke. "I'm afraid we have turned us sacred traditions into cheap entertainment. Now they are angry." Lisa scoffed. "You're saying these are curses? From spirits?" Nduka leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do you know what it means to offend the spirits of dead ancestor? To twist their stories for money? Nollywood didn't just tell lies. We spat on our own roots, and now we're paying the price. I was lucky. I had to quit acting when their warning came." "What do you mean, sir? Did the spirits warn you?" "They did." With partial stroke, Nduka threw out his damaged hand to show what he suffered. "I left Lagos to stay away from Nollywood, but now Nollywood has also found her way down to Asaba." Nduka was just finishing his answers when a flashy car drove in. 2 gentlemen that stepped out of the car dropped a horrible news. 4 of those who were out in Asaba River for movie shooting has been drowned. Their speedboat went out of control and overturned. Lisa stood frozen, her heart racing as she stared at Nduka's composure. She had come searching for answers, but now all she had were more questions and a growing sense of dread. Something dark was at work in Nollywood, something far beyond her understanding. Before Lisa became the fearless journalist known for exposing truths that no one dared to confront, she was a little girl marked by forces far older than she could understand. It started when Lisa was just 7 years old. Her mother, Mrs. Johnson, had noticed strange things about her daughter. Lisa often spoke of people no one else could see, described places she had never been to with accuracy. At first, Mrs. Johnson dismissed it as childish imagination, but soon the incidents became impossible to ignore. Lisa began having vivid dreams, dreams of shadowy figures, glowing masks, and rivers that whispered her name. One evening, as the family sat for dinner, she screamed and yelled, and when her mother asked what was the problem, Lisa said that a figure hanged on the wall is laughing at her. That was the last straw for Mrs. Johnson. "She's possessed," the pastor declared after hearing the stories. He was a towering man with a booming voice and an unwavering belief in his mission to deliver souls from evil. "This child is under the influence of water spirits. Bring her to the church for deliverance immediately." Lisa's mother didn't hesitate. Desperate to protect her only child, she dressed Lisa in her best clothes and took her to the church the very next Sunday. When the pastor called Lisa forward, the congregation went silent. Lisa's curious eyes scanned the crowd as she slowly approached the pulpit. The pastor placed a hand on her forehead and began to pray, his voice rising with each word. But before he could finish, something incredible happened. Lisa's body stiffened and her eyes rolled back in her head. A gust of wind blew through the church, extinguishing the candles and sending the curtains fluttering wildly. Gasps echoed through the room. The pastor stumbled backward, clutching his chest. "She is not for you." A deep, resonant voice boomed from Lisa's lips, a voice that was not her own. It was calm yet commanding, with an authority that silenced the entire room. "She belongs to those who sent her." The pastor's face turned pale. "What is this?" he whispered, backing away. Lisa opened her eyes, now glowing faintly with an unearthly light. Her gaze swept over the stunned congregation, and for a moment, no one moved. Then, as suddenly as it began, the glow faded, and Lisa collapsed into her mother's arms. It was the father that stopped the wife from taking Lisa again to any pastor. But from that day on, the parents knew that their daughter was a different child. They surely didn't want her to be seen as a freak, so they guided her into her studies and her love of writing. And finally, Lisa became a sharp and curious journalist. But the gods, those unseen forces that had claimed her as their own, never left her. They had given her this gift for a reason, and her assignment was clear, even if she didn't fully understand it yet. Years later, when the shadows began to gather in Nollywood, when actors started dying and whispers of curses filled the air, Lisa's instincts told her it was time. Time to follow the trail, time to uncover the truth. She thought she was just chasing a story, but in reality, the gods had been preparing her for this moment all her life. And as she stood on the face of a mystery far darker and older than anything she'd ever encountered, the forces that had chosen her were watching closely, ready to guide her or consume her if she strayed from her path. Lisa stumbled out of Nduka's house that night, her mind racing. She had seen death before, but this felt different. Her usually sharp confidence was shaken. Was this all just paranoia and coincidence? Or was there something more sinister at play? That night, as she reviewed her notes, she noticed something strange. All the actors who had died or fallen ill recently had one thing in common. They had played roles that mocked Igbo traditions or depicted them as evil. Madame Mary had been a priestess in the movie titled Dark Ancestry. Andrew Aze had starred in Blood Shrine. The four men that lost their lives in Asaba River had roles on a controversial movie called The Curse of Ra. And Nduka, whom the gods warned with partial stroke, believed the role he played was the reason why the gods got angry with him. The pattern was undeniable, Lisa said to herself. The next morning, Lisa decided to visit one of the top directors in Nollywood. His name is Chief Ogadagidi, a flamboyant man who dismissed the rumors around sudden deaths of actors with a wave of his hand. "Do you know how many superstitions people create just to explain the unexplainable?" Chief said, sipping his beer at interval. Actors die all the time. It's tragic, yes, but one Nigeria can happen to anyone, anytime, anywhere. Lisa adjusted her recorder on the table, her sharp eyes fixed on the Nollywood mogul. But your movies tend to demonize Igbo spiritual cultures? Lisa's voice was calm but firm, each word cutting through the air. People are connecting that to these unexplained deaths. Chief Ogadagidi shifted uncomfortably, running a hand over his beard. Lisa, it's not as simple as you think. The audience needs drama. They need to feel fear, conflict, and triumph. Movies are about emotions. Stories sell better when the evil comes from the shrine or the dibia. But at what cost? Lisa threw back at Chief. You're reducing a rich spiritual heritage to caricatures of evil. You're feeding stereotypes that make people's holy culture to look barbaric. Chief Ogadagidi leaned back in his chair, defensive, rubbing his hand on his big stomach. Look, I'm a Christian. I can't, in good conscience, glorify idols or witchcraft. It's against my faith. Is it against your faith to tell the truth? Lisa countered. You're not glorifying, you're distorting. Our ancestors didn't practice evil. They sought wisdom and balance. They were true disciples of nature and never took from nature more than they needed. Chief stared at Lisa like a zombie, but the clever journalist was not relenting. By turning those traditions into symbols of darkness, aren't you feeding the very ignorance which colonial masters planted in us? Chief Ogadagidi sighed, his voice dropping. Lisa, it's not about ignorance, to be honest. It's about survival. A film about the complexity or beauty of Igbo spirituality will not sell. Lisa leaned forward, her voice steady but piercing. So, lies are more profitable than truth? I am disappointed, Chief. Do you realize that your movies are shaping how our children see themselves? Chief looked away, guilt flickering across his face. He stirred his bottle of Hero absent-mindedly. I don't have the luxury to change the narrative, Lisa. I'm just giving the people what they want. Lisa shook her head. Or what you've made them want. Isn't it ironic, Chief? You're a storyteller, yet you've chosen to erase the story of your people to fit into one written by others. How long will we keep selling shadows of ourselves just to survive? And even when the gods have shown signs of vengeance, you chose to be the senseless fly that went into the grave with a corpse. For the first time, Chief Ogadagidi had no response. The silence that hung between them was louder than any argument. The silence made Lisa to notice something strange. Behind him, on the wall of his office, hung a mask, an ancient Igbo ceremonial mask. Its hollow eyes seemed to follow her every move. What's with the mask? Lisa asked, trying to sound casual. Oh, that? Just an artifact, Chief said with a suspicious smile. It adds flavor to my theater room. I got it from an old market in Enugu. Lisa felt uneasy. She couldn't explain it, but something about the mask didn't feel right. She carefully asked, and Chief agreed for a photograph. Lisa stood up and moved over to Chief's position to make sure that her cameraman captures the mask. As she left the office, she decided to do some digging over the mask and into Chief's past. That night, Lisa tossed and turned in her sleep, haunted by the image of the wooden mask she had seen in Chief's studio. In her dream, the mask came alive, its carved eyes glowing faintly as it whispered her name in a voice both ancient and sorrowful. Suddenly, she saw scenes of her ancestors, once proud and vibrant, reduced to fearful, silent figures hiding their traditions. The mask whispered to her, its voice trembling with anger. Why have you forgotten us? Lisa woke up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding. She couldn't shake the feeling that the mask wasn't just a carved wood in a film studio. It was an ancestral whisper, crying out for justice. Lisa's fear was now mixed with anger. She was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The next day, Lisa visited an old friend of his father, a historian and cultural expert. She showed him a photo of the mask. Where did you find this? The learned fellow queried. I saw it hanging in the office of one of these Nollywood kingpin, Lisa replied. He says it's just a prop, a flavor for his film studio. The expert shook his head violently. That cannot be. That's the Ekwensu Mask of Wrath. It's a sacred artifact used in balance between good and destructive forces. If it's not handled with respect, it can bring chaos. Lisa's blood ran cold. Chaos? What kind of chaos? The bookman leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. the kind that doesn't stop until it takes everything. Lisa left the man's house with a new sense of urgency. What is Chief doing with such a powerful artifact? Was he using it intentionally, or was he just ignorant of its significance? Either way, it explained the growing darkness or growing mystery surrounding the industry. Meanwhile, Chief Ogadagidi sat in his office, staring at the pile of scripts before him. He picked up the latest draft of a Nollywood script, one where the Igbo market days were portrayed as malevolent spirits, bringing destruction to anyone who dared to follow their ways. He thought of the prophets and smiled handsomely to himself. The early life the young Ogadagidi hadn't always been like this. He had once been an ambitious young filmmaker, eager to make a name for himself. But the harsh reality of the industry had driven him to make compromises. Compromises that started with his culture. In the early days, he had tried to tell stories of his people, stories of their strength and wisdom. But those films never made money. The real hits came when he painted the Igbo gods as vengeful spirits, when he twisted his heritage into something that terrified people. The audience loved it. His bank account filled, but at the cost of his soul. The hardship of his past pushed him into this path. Christianity took root deep in his heart, erasing the rich culture that once defined him. Now Chief felt disconnected, like a stranger in his own skin. But there was no turning back. He had chosen the path of the marketable lie. He sat and pondered over Lisa's last visit. The journalist was asking tough questions about his films. She was beginning to get on his nerves. She had become too vocal, questioning his morals, pushing him to look deeper at the harm he was causing to his people. Chief couldn't afford to have someone like her ruining the narrative he had carefully crafted. He was prepared to silence her, even if it meant making her disappear. But what Chief didn't realize was that the gods he had been mocking weren't idle. They had their own plans. Lisa rushed into the studio, her heart racing. She drove straight from the historian's office, where she learned that the mask hanging on the wall was no ordinary decoration. It was ancient, powerful, and dangerous. It had been used in rituals long forgotten, capable of invoking forces beyond understanding. Panic gripped her as she burst through the door, breathless. "Chief, you have to take that mask down. It's dangerous." Chief Ogadagadi barely looked up from his work. "Dangerous? It's just a prop for the movie, Lisa. Relax." "No, it's not just a prop. It's an artifact, a relic of our past, and it can bring harm if you don't return it to where it belongs," Lisa pleaded, her voice shaking. But Chief Ogadagidi was already turning away, dismissing her warning with a wave. "I'm not going to entertain superstitions. You can leave now, Lisa." Lisa stood frozen, her fear growing as she looked at the mask on the wall, knowing he didn't understand. "Your life is in danger, Chief. Please return it to where it belongs." "This mask has been here for the past 3 years, Lisa." Chief was getting impatient. "And you are just seeing vision for me?" Chief Ogadagadi was finishing some edits when a cold breeze swept through the studio, even though the windows were closed. The mask on the wall began to move. At first it was subtle, a slight tilt to one side, as if it were alive, aware of his presence. But as Chief stared, his breath caught in his throat. The mask slowly turned toward him, its eyes now glowing an eerie red. Lisa got up from her chair and ran towards the exit. "Chief Ogadagadi," a voice rasped from the mask, a deep, echoing sound that made his skin crawl. The room seemed to pulse with energy, dark and thick. "Why have you decided to bring doom upon yourself?" Chief stood frozen, his mind racing. He couldn't believe it. But the mask spoke again, this time louder, its voice wrapping around his very soul. "You who turned our truth into lies, you will pay the price." Chief threw out his right leg to run away, but the chair he sat on grabbed his left leg. He stumbled and fell flat on the ground. The air grew thick and suffocating, and the room seemed to close in on him. "For 3 years I left you, hoping that you will change. But you are determined to take your ignorance to the grave. You old fool." Terrified, Chief Ogadagidi yanked the mask off the wall, his hands shaking uncontrollably. The second his fingers touched it, a shockwave of pain surged through his body. The mask felt alive in his grip, as though it were trying to fight him. With a weak voice, Chief called out, "Help Lisa! I made a mistake." The day Lisa's article was published, the industry erupted. The expose detailed everything. The corrupt contracts, the fabricated narratives, the unseen hands of religious crusaders, and the lengths to which certain individuals went to maintain control. It was bold, detailed, and undeniable. Lisa had named names, backed up with hard evidence, and the world was listening. The last lines reads, Igbo land is a mixture of nature's abundance, deeply intertwined with a legacy of unparalleled ingenuity. Igbo heritage stands as a testament to the brilliance of a people whose culture is as timeless as the ancient lands that cradle it. The cultural landscape is a symphony of art, sound, and spirituality, reflecting the creativity of a people who find beauty in every aspect of existence. Igbo heritage is more than a relic of the past. It is a living, breathing force that inspires resilience and innovation. The Igbo language, with its poetic cadence, carries the soul of a people deeply connected to the land and its rhythms. The tradition is layers of ancient wisdom. At its heart lies a practice that celebrates the sacredness of life. Fairness, therefore, demands that the Igbo story be told with dignity. By telling this story with pride, we honor our ancestors, preserve our identity, and inspire future generations to embrace the richness of who they are. Thanks for listening, good people. Give me a thumb up if you are a true son of the soil. Drop a comment in the comment section. Please don't forget to subscribe and share. Remember, we love you.